Iuic, Circus of Citations? Yeah, what's going on, party people? The place to be. I go by the name of the BK Apologist, transmitting all the way live. New York is the city, and the Knicks is winning, and Brooklyn is the borough. What's good? What's popping? Yeah, it's been a crazy week here in New York. Knicks taking out Boston. You know, didn't see it coming, but these guys, the synergy, the grit, it's been pretty amazing. And I know this is not ESPN, but I'm from New York, so I gotta say something. The Knicks haven't been in the finals since the last 25 years, so it's a big thing for us over here. You've seen the videos over at Madison Square Garden. It's been lit this whole weekend. You know what I mean? So shout out to us. you know, let's see what happens now when we face the Pacers. But anyway, um, if you haven't yet already, please like, share, and subscribe. All right. Tell a friend to tell a friend that it's him again. You know what I mean? Go post this in your local quadrants of the interwebs. And if you like how it goes down with BK, please show your support by throwing a little digital coinage my way via the PayPal link that's attached at the top of the chat. Or if you like to be a monthly supporter of BK, you can join the Patreon where you get an assortment of gifts to enhance your personal Bible study. And big up to my man, Vaughn Eric, in the building. What's going on, sir? I've seen you in a minute. Hope everything's going well with you. Yeah, so we are here not just to relish in the recent victory of my Knicks, but we're here to deal with, once again, IUIC. One moment. Yeah. So, um, yeah. So, just give me a minute. Yeah. So, we're talking about a recent publication from the leader of IUIC, entitled "Biblical Events from Assyria to America: Correcting His Story to Include Our Story." And just looking through it, I know Vocab has done some commentary on this book, and I also want to throw my proverbial 2 cents. And what we see here is what we always see in their videos and their other book called Apolloprophetics, which is a shot at the UA. So we must be doing something good if they're actually writing pamphlets about us. But as we see, their ability to gather information is found wanting time and time again. Big up to Michelle Turner, bodega ladies in the building. Yeah. Um, and what I've been showcasing is their same research methodology, which is eisegeting, which is, reading things into the text, isn't just for the Bible. They do this with all information that they use to back up their argumentation. And what we're going to look at today is we're going to see once again that they do not vet their sources, which includes the leader of the entire camp, Bishop Nathaniel. He does not cite his sources. Therefore, the eisegesis, the eisegetical rendering of information trickles down throughout the whole organization. If the leader does this, then those who follow him, it's a good chance they'll do it also. So what we're going to do today, we're going to look at two sources that he uses, and we're going to do a deep dive, and we're going to see if these citations are up to snuff. Okay, so right, that's the that's not the actual book cover. I had some I took some poetic liaison, with that. Big up to Jim Green, was good, bro. So let's get to it. So he cites the Zondervan Compact Bible Dictionary, right? Ham, the youngest son of Noah, born probably about 96 years before the flood, and one of 8 persons to live through the flood. He became the progenitor of the dark races, not the Negroes, but the Egyptians, Ethiopians, Libyans, and Canaanites. Notice Ham is not the father of the Negro. Why? Because the Negroes descend from Noah's son Shem. Unbeknownst to the general public, there's been a racist campaign by apologists, Christians, to remove this Ham definition from the Zondervan dictionary. These same racist Christians will soon claim Zondervan is not an academic work. Well, here's the issue. The issue isn't that the Christians are being racist by want to, deal with this entry in their dictionary. The issue is the entry itself comes from a racist ideology. That's the issue we have, and they should also have the same issue. Now, what am I talking about? Well, there's a ideology at that time that was being proposed, known as the Hamitic hypothesis. Okay, the Hamitic hypothesis is well known to students of Africa. It states that everything of value ever found in Africa was brought there by the Hamites, allegedly a branch of the Caucasian race. Seligman formulates as follows: apart from relatively late Semitic influence, the civilizations of Africa are the civilizations of the Hamites. Its history, the record of these people, and of their interaction with the 2 other African stocks, the Negro and the Bushman. Whether this influence was exerted by highly civilized Egyptians or by such wider pastoralists as are represented by the present day by the Beha and Somali, the incoming Hamites were pastoral, quote, Europeans arriving wave after wave, better armed as well as quicker witted than the dark agricultural Negroes. Right? So that's the hypothesis. When they saw the highly advanced architecture and culture in the continent of Africa, they had to reconcile that. So to make themselves feel better, it's like, well, these things were created by a Caucasoid African tribe, a white African tribe. Perhaps because slavery was both still legal and profitable in the United States, and because it was deemed necessary and right to protect it, there arose an American school of anthropology which attempted to prove scientifically that the Egyptian was a Caucasian, far removed from the inferior Negro. This is from the Hamitic hypothesis, its origin and functions and time perspective, Edith R. Sanders. All right? So this was propaganda. This was a part of white hegemony. Man, I usually get that term right. Hegemony, there you go. It was part of the white mythos of white supremacy, right? That anything that's good or advanced had to come from European hands. So when they went into the continent of Africa and saw the greatness therein, it couldn't possibly be, quote unquote, Negroes that did it. So they created out of whole cloth a white African race, which they projected into Ham. The Hamites were designated as early culture bearers in Africa owing to the natural superiority of intellect and character of all Caucasoids. Such a viewpoint had dual merit for European purposes. It maintained the image of the Negro as an inferior being, and it pointed to the alleged fact that development could come to him only by mediation of the white race. It also implied a self appointed duty of the quote higher races to civilize the lower ones, a notion which was eventually formulated as the white man's burden. Right? So that's exactly right, Nick Jones. Zondervan was trying to separate black folks from yes. And yes, their source game is basura. These are facts. So let's keep going. Now there's a book here called The Lost White Tribe, Explorers, Scientists, and the Theory That Changed a Continent by Michael F. Robertson. He goes into greater detail about this hypothesis. In 1876, a mountainous region to the west of Lake Victoria, which is today Ruwenzori Mountains National Park in Uganda, the famed explorer Harry Morton Stanley encountered Africans with what he was convinced were light complexions and European features. Stanley's discovery of this African, quote, white tribe haunted him and seemed to substantiate the so-called Hamitic hypothesis, the theory that descendants of Ham, the son of Noah, had populated Africa and other remote places, proving that the source and spread of human races around the world could be traced to and explained by a biblical story. So they hijacked Ham and made him white. So all the progenitors of Ham, of course, would follow suit and be white as well. In the Lost White Tribe of Africa, Michael Robertson traces the rise and fall of the Hamitic hypothesis. In addition to recounting Stanley's quote discovery, Robertson shows how it influenced others, including that of the Ainu in Japan and Villamar Stephenson's tribe of quote blonde Eskimos in the Arctic, or the 9,000-year-old skeleton found in Washington State with what they deem Caucasian features. As Robertson shows, race theory, stemming originally from the Bible, not only guided exploration but archaeology, including Charles March discovery of the Grand Zimbabwe site in 1872, and literature such as H. Rider Haggard's King Solomon Mines, whose publication launched an entire literary subgenre dedicated to white tribes in remote places. The Hamitic hypothesis, which shaped the theories of Carl Jung and guide psychological and anthropological notions of the primitive. So this hypothesis was far-reaching. It was very popular because, again, it props up the white hegemony and the mythos of the white man being the superior being, right? In the Lost White Tribe of Africa, Michael Robertson traces the right. Wait, okay, that's a repeat. The hypothesis also formed the foundation of the European colonial system, which was premised on assumptions about racial hierarchy at whose top were the white races, the purest and oldest of them all. It was a small step from the hypothesis to theories of Aryan superiority, which served as the basis of the race laws in Nazi Germany and had horrific and catastrophic consequences. Through racial thinking changed profoundly after World War II, a version of Hamitic validation of the, quote, whiter tribes laid the groundwork for the conflict within Africa itself after decolonization, including the Rwandan genocide. So you see how damaging this hypothesis was. That it caused a rift in between Africans in the continent, where one would be considered closer to the European, therefore they were the more superior Africans. So they would have these fights and genocides within each other. All right. So, real quick, you know, and okay, that's interesting. Okay. But But that's the issue we have. So when you see the Zondervan say about Ham, not the Negro, it's stemming from the Hamitic hypothesis, right? It's saying that, well, the Egyptians and Canaanites, these other people, they can't be black because, they're advanced. They have great architecture and literary findings, and what these artifacts, which are so incredible, it couldn't possibly be made by black people. That's what it's saying. It's racist propaganda to uplift the white hegemony of the myth of the superior European. And it crept through not only psychology and the sciences, but also in theology as well. So that's racist. The thing that Zondervan is saying about Ham is racist. Not that it's not us saying this, that we're the racist ones. No, they're being racist. And it's sad that the good bishop either doesn't see it or doesn't care because it supports his claim. And it's not just IUIC, most One West derivatives, right? Most One West denominations love to use this quote when they're in their camps on Saturday. That's proof. And what, unbeknownst to them, you're being active participants in white supremacy. You are an agent because you're propagating the Hamitic hypothesis every time you quote that entry about Ham in that dictionary. You're the racist. And what people, the Christians and others, have been alerting people of is this is stemming from racist propaganda. It's racist because it's attacking and it's taking away the credit of black people in the continent of Africa. And the people in the UA who are mostly black and brown are going to take offense because, we are proud of who we are in Christ first, obviously, but we're also proud to be, where we're from. And we're going to attack anything that's racist because racist is sinful. It's sinful. So that's the issue that we have. Any Hebrew that uses that entry from that particular dictionary, you are propagating white supremacy doctrine. You just are. All right. So next up, this is proving Esau became known as Edom. And he's quoting from The Rise of Christendom by Edwin Johnson. And it says here, in the land of Rome and of the Maghreb was a great empire, that of the Ionians or Greeks. King Philip was a descendant of Esau, son of Isaac. In his kingdom, there was a town, Macedon, residence of the kings of Greece. And this land where the Greek sages and all the wisdom of the world came from them. They are such as Aristotle, Hippocrates, Plato, Socrates, Hermes, Polyanus, and Agamemnon. I butchered that last name. Please forgive me. So he quotes this to back up this claim that that Esau became known as Edom, right? And that the Greeks and the Romans are descendants of Esau, right? Interesting thing about Mr. Edward Johnson, right? We're going to look at this paper entitled The Surprisingly Long History and the Conspiracy Theory That Ancient Rome Didn't Exist by Spencer McDaniel. So he goes through a history of different people throughout time that propagated this theory that ancient Rome didn't exist, that that particular time of history was just created out of whole cloth. And one of these people that actually propagated this theory was, you guessed it, Edwin Johnson. Atheist appropriation of Hadrian's conspiracy theories, although John Hadrian was a traditionalist Catholic, his conspiracy theory about okay, yeah, my other headphones went out. So one more time, let's take it from the top. Let's take it from the top. So atheist appropriation of Hadrian's conspiracy theories. Although Jean Hadrian was a traditionalist Catholic, his conspiracy theory about nearly all ancient texts being fake was later appropriated by the English radical atheist writer Edwin Johnson, who first started out along the path of denying history by promoting the Christ myth theory. In 1887, Johnson published an anonymous book titled Antigua Mater, a study of Christian origins, in which he asserts that neither Jesus himself nor any of the apostles ever existed, and that Christianity did not emerge until the time of the Antonian dynasty in the second century CE, about a century later than it really did. So this guy went a step further than just regular Christ mythers. Like, the apostles didn't exist either, right? At some point, Johnson became an avid reader and admirer of John Harduin's works. Naturally, he took Harduin's claims much further than even Harduin himself had gone. Harduin only argued that most supposed ancient Greek, Roman, and early Christian texts were forgeries, and that many events in Greek, Roman, and early Christian history never really happened. Johnson, by contrast, was possibly the earliest person to argue that the entire period of recorded human history was totally fabricated. Okay, this is the guy Bishop Nathaniel is quoting. This dude believes that that entire period of recorded history, not not just forged, fabricated. Like, there's no truth in it at all. It doesn't exist. Right? All right. So in his book, The Rise of Christendom, which is the book that the good bishop has quoting in his book, and his book, The Pauline Epistles Restudied and Explained, Johnson claims that Jesus, the apostles, early Christianity, the church fathers, the church councils, and the entire period of human history spanning the years from late antiquity to the 13th century CE, roughly 700 years of history, making up the vast majority of the Middle Ages, never really happened. And ladies and gentlemen, we are blessed with the the visitation of one of Esau's greatest descendants,
That's right. That's right.
Mr. Vocab Malone. What's going on, Vocab?
Oh man, I'm glad to be here. I'm glad you're covering this topic. A lot of people don't know about this book and they don't know how much is in there and how much isn't in there, and they don't know about the chart changes. There's a lot to cover, so I'm glad you're covering it.
Yeah, so I'm just covering a couple of things here. I just did the Zondervan entry with Ham, talked about that, and how
Mhm.
that comes from the Hamitic hypothesis, and now we're dealing with him citing this gentleman, Mr. Johnson here.
Oh, the rise of Christendom. Tell them about this. Tell them about this, Alfredo.
Yeah, so basically, um, this individual has written and taught that pretty much the Middle Ages never really happened.
Checks out.
His it never happened. Jesus didn't exist. The apostles didn't exist. The church fathers, the councils, all of that from antiquity to the 13th century, 700 years of history never really happened. Right. So this is the guy that the good bishop here is quoting. All right. Now, uh, but let's get to the actual book. Right. This is what I just read to you as an article talking about the author of the book. Right. But let's look at the actual book itself that Bishop Nathaniel is quoting from. Because remember, he's using this to lay claim that the Greco Romans come from Esau. So let's see what this book says. The dwellers in the Hijaz, in the desert, and the Arabs, and all children of Ibrahim and of Ishmael, these legends form a network connecting the sacred places of the Mohammedans in Arabia and those in Syria. From the standpoint of the old mosque at Hebron, which takes its name from the quote friend of Allah, and from that of the mosque at Mecca, the genesis of the sacred poetry can without without difficulty be understood. The call in the Bible at this point is but to confuse the narrative. This legend, right, Jacob and Esau, is talking about, is designed to explain the enmity that was felt to be a standing one between the peoples of whom the twins are symbolic. Jacob and Esau are symbolic. They're not real, he's saying. Okay. Blind Isaac prays that the gift of prophecy might fall on Yakub, who was Esau, and set before him by a ruse a dish of roast lamb. Gains of his brother Yakub, yet prayed, feared the for him, and his posterity became numerous. Posterity become numerous. The chronicle explains that by the race of Esau is meant, quote, the Greeks, and the Roham was a Roman and son of Esau. These children gained possession of the land of the Greeks. In other words, the Arabians mean by the sons of Esau, the inhabitants of the Roman Empire. The Jewish chronicles designated the name by Edom. So he's not saying that this is true. He's saying that this is what the legend is telling us. He
You
believes this
know,
is legend. Yes, sir.
it's interesting. They'll talk about this and look at this, but if you actually look at what the Bible says, there is a verse in Joel that is really, I feel like it's just not looked at by these guys, and it should be. I'm just going to show you briefly because there you see trying to say that Esau is the Greeks, right?
Right.
Well, Joel 3:6. I'm going to Joel 3:6 here. Now, this isn't the LSB. The KJV, I know it's blurry. The KJV, though, in Joel 3:6, you can look it up. I think it says Javan or whatever, which is like an ancient name for Greece, and that's why it translates it in the LSB as Greeks. But listen to this verse. I'm going to start with verse 5. Since you have taken my silver and my gold, brought my desirable treasures to your temples, this is Yahweh talking, and sold the sons of Judah and the sons of Jerusalem to the sons of the Greeks in order to remove them far from their borders. Now, this is interesting because they use this a lot of times for like, oh, look who we're sold to. but it says sons of the Greeks. And if you look, Greeks in the original Hebrew, the Greek, the term that's translated here, it's Javan. So this word in Joel 3:6 that is translated as Greeks is the Hebrew word Javan. Now, why is that important? Javan is a son of Japheth. That's the real important thing. Javan is the son of Japheth. So my point, just throwing in there, because you see they're trying to use this other book, but what does the Bible actually say? It doesn't have the Greeks as descendants of Esau. The Bible itself has the Greeks as descendants of Javan, and that's why Joel 3:6 says Greeks there. And again, if you look in the Hebrew, it says Javan or whatever. So Javan, again, is a person, is identified as a forefather of the Greeks, but he's a son of who? Japheth, meaning he's not Semitic, he's Japhetic. So the Greeks are Japhetic, not Semitic.
Right.
Anyways, just an aside, they're listening to
that's
Edwin
good.
Johnson and stuff, but they're not listening to the Bible. I just encourage you, if you're a Hebrew Israelite, look up Joel 3:6 in the Hebrew and see what the underlying word there that's translated as Greeks, see what it is and find out whose descendant that is. That'll answer your questions.
And instead of them looking at that, they look at Mr. Johnson, who here says that the method of the Arabian historic mythology is essentially the same with that of the old Greek tribal mythology. Twins who quarrel are symbolic of rival tribes or peoples. The rivalry of the Roman and the Arabian Empire is expressed. The religious empire of the prophetic Yaqub is destined to supplant of the unprophetic Esau. So he's saying that these are not people; these are motifs. These are symbols to explain rival beef between enemy camps and or tribes or nations.
And he specifies as Romans and Arabs.
Right.
That doesn't work with the Hebrew Israelite theory either.
Not at all. Not at all. So the good bishop is quoting someone who doesn't believe. Like he's using this book to back up the claim that the Greeks, the Greco-Roman world comes from Esau. Now, vocab just showed us that that's not true from the Bible. But it's also not true from the source that he's using, because this same dude is saying that, well, yeah, none of this is real. I'm just telling you what the story is, but it's all mythology. And the mythology is being used by the wrong players. Because remember, this guy don't believe any of this existed. He don't believe Esau. There was an Esau, let alone who Esau represents. So once again, these guys do not. Michelle said, it was all a dream.
I used to read
Greek Word Up magazine.
Edwin Johnson's magazine.
So
Edwin Johnson was considered, my understanding, as a conspiracy theorist even at that time. And I saw a funny review. I think you'd like this, where it said that this book's theory is unburdened by the evidence. It's the actual quote is utterly unburdened with evidence. It's meaning that they don't bother with that. They don't not even concerned about any kind of evidence. It's not a concern of the book.
Not at all. Not at all. And that's part of his theory, actually, because let's look at this again. It says here, this is from the surprisingly long history of the conspiracy theory that ancient Rome didn't exist. It says at some point Johnson became an avid reader and admirer of Jane Hardawin's works. Naturally, he took Hardawin's claims much further than even Hardawin himself had gone. Hardawin only argued that most supposed ancient Greek, Roman, and early texts were forgeries, and that many events in Greek, Roman, and early Christian history never really happened. Johnson, by contrast, was possibly the earliest person to argue that an entire period of recorded human history was totally fabricated. Like it didn't even exist. None of it. Right? Jesus, the apostles, the church fathers, Caesar. None of these dudes existed. This was all just one big conspiracy. All right. This is the guy that Bishop Nathaniel cites. It's crazy. Absolutely
Yeah.
crazy. Now, vocab, you've done some work in this as well. What were some of the things that you found very interesting that he cites in the book?
Well, it's interesting when he cites From Babylon to Timbuktu, because it's obvious that this book is meant as a One West replacement for From Babylon to Timbuktu by Rudolph Windsor.
Mm,
Now, Nathaniel has interviewed Rudolph Windsor. They have an interview online you can see, and they have a discussion about all this stuff. And in the beginning of the book, it says, even though this stuff is like secretive and hidden, we are going to rely on esteemed scholars and historians, and it lists them out, including Dr. Ben. And then it also says Rudolph Windsor in there. And then it
mm,
quotes him at length, specifically for one of the hinge point claims of this whole thesis, which
mm,
is 1,000,000 Jews fled into Africa. That's sort of a hinge point claim for the whole One West Hebrew Israelism thesis.
right.
Well, what's the source for that? Windsor. What's
Mm,
Windsor's source? If you crack open the book, which I did and I have underlined and highlighted, he gives no source. There is no source for that. They go around repeating this alternative history. They rely on Windsor, and yet then they disagree, discount other things Windsor. But for one of the most important claims of the book, which it's not. I don't think that everyone reading it would understand how big of a deal it is to say, "Oh, 1,000,000 people," uh, because that's kind of like a key element of this whole thing. Now, it still wouldn't prove their theory, even if 1,000,000 Jews did go into Africa. It doesn't actually prove the whole theory.
right.
But they cite Windsor as a source, but it's obvious that this is a revision of Windsor's work. And a perfect example is what actually just brought up. Windsor holds that white people are descendants of Japheth. He has a whole chapter of it in his book.
Mm.
And Ron Dalton challenged Nathaniel, and I called him Nervous Nate because he wanted to get Ron Dalton off the panel as soon as possible when this happened. He galloped away on his horse, right? He grabbed that steed he rented out, for Passover, and galloped away from Ron Dalton. But the point is, the thing that Dalton was challenging him on, that's a fellow Hebrew Israelite. To those who don't know, he got retweeted by Kyrie Irving. Was, well, who were the descendants of Japheth now? Because you're saying this is Esau and this group is that group, and they don't have a good answer because they want to say everyone has some biblical parallel. And in response to that, Nathaniel re-uploaded a really old video where it's like someone's like really basic phone where you can't even read what's in front, really like from the early days of recording on phones type of thing or whatever it was. Probably not even a phone, it's probably like an iPod or something. The very beginning and he was saying a lot of Israelites, this was Nathaniel talking years ago, like 11 years ago, and they uploaded it again. A lot of Israelites say that white people are from Japheth. Why do they think that? Just because they read it in Ron Dalton's book, and then they never went and checked it out anywhere else. They believe it just because it's in Ron Dalton. I'm saying Ron Dalton. I messed up. I'm sorry. I meant to say, apologies. I meant to say Rudolph Windsor's book. This is before Ron Dalton's work. I think maybe was even around. I'm not sure exactly, but he was like, they just read it in Rudolph Windsor's book that white people are Japheth, right? What's my point by saying all that? That's what they did with the 1,000,000 figure. They just read Rudolph Windsor's book and they never checked it out anywhere else. And it's not the case just that people only looked at Rudolph Windsor for this whole Japheth thing. That's actually an idea that's older. So they use these sources in these key ways, and even the original source themselves doesn't document it. So if you're citing a source that says something, but there's no evidence from the source you're citing that what they're saying there is true, doesn't really help to cite some source if it doesn't cite its source.
Right.
It's like citing a secondary source, but the secondary source was almost really more of a tertiary source.
Does Windsor's book have a bibliography or footnotes?
He has sort of a bibliography in the back. The footnotes are a little convoluted, but for these key claims, there's no citation for it. Like the 1,000,000, there is no citation for it.
Now that would be a heavily corroborated event. If 1,000,000 people migrated somewhere, you would think that multiple sources would record that event. That's huge. 1,000,000 people,
Yeah.
So
And there's a problem with it because Tacitus and Josephus give two different figures for how many people were actually even in Jerusalem. and Tacitus, I think his figure was lower than Josephus's, but I think Josephus might have said there was maybe 1 million people in Jerusalem. I think Tacitus said 600,000. Don't quote me on that, but the numbers were different that they gave. Now, here's the point. That would just be the people in Jerusalem when the destruction happened. That's not how many people fled, first of all.
Right.
Second of all, Tacitus' number was lower, so there's some disagreement. Obviously, you could say 600 to 1 million, I suppose 600,000 to 1 million, but there's a disagreement about how many people were in Jerusalem when the Romans conquered it. But not all, by any estimation, those people were getting defeated and killed. They didn't all go into Africa. For 1 million of them, if that would be all people in the city, using the higher number. So I think my guess is they're using it for how many Josephus might have said were in Jerusalem itself. Right. That's my guess where the figure. I mean, obviously, I'm assuming they have some kind of mild justification in the first place, and I'm talking about Windsor, but there's no source cited for that at all. There's just nothing. So it's just irrelevant.
Right. But again, we see this pattern of, and I said this earlier when the live first started, that they take this exegetical framework, this methodology, right, and they use it for everything. So not only do they take the Bible out of context, they take everything out of context completely. So even if the source is credible, they will misquote a credible source too. Like there's this constant, it's just one big sharpshooter fallacy. It's like we got this claim and we'll use whatever we can to kind of force these sources to say what we want to say. And it's fallacious, and it's deceitful, because if you actually, because again, Nathaniel is quoting this book. Did you read the book? Because if you read, before that source that he cites, he tells you that this is legends. Esau and Jacob is mythology. He says it in the same book you're quoting. So I'm like, did you read, or you just read the part that fit your agenda?
Yeah, I mean, so the New York Times in 1904 actually reviewed this book. You can find it, and it's pretty. You didn't go over that, did you?
No. I did look at it, but I decided just to quote the book itself.
But it's wild when you see Johnson published this book after he was already dead. Well, it was published after he was already dead, so he wasn't even around to defend it or anything in the first place, and so that's a problem. And when you look at it, it's really wild. The New York Times refers to the book review as the abolition of history. The abolition of history. And they make a joke and say that schoolboys all over the world will rise up and call him blessed, because now they don't have to study all this stuff because it never existed. So they won't have to study it. But guys, Johnson is saying that Benedictine monks sat around and made up all of this Middle Age history. They just made it all up. It's the invention of Benedictine monks who made up everything about the Middle Ages. And then he even has, for example, he says that, I mean, oh my goodness, when you look at this, it's hard to believe how many things he says are legends or fables. But the thing is, that would include the whole, New Testament, basically, as you're pointing out. And
but he would be a precursor to the whole peaceful family theory, right? That's kind of like the same kind of flavor of that, that these Romans decided to write the New Testament to somehow, pacify the people and control them better. And, it's that it was not history. It was just propaganda to utilize against people. So, but this dude said the Middle Ages didn't happen. That's crazy. Now, granted, how we record history today is not the same as like Herodias. Granted, right? And yes, throughout history there have been known forgeries, right? But to say that the entire time period just didn't happen is crazy work. It's crazy work.
Yeah.
So, but
Yeah.
yeah, man. So I just want to. Was there anything else in the book that you found interesting?
You talking about the
This particular book that the bishop did.
from biblical? Well, first of all, I mean, I don't really think that Nathaniel wrote the book.
Oh,
Y-
oh,
Well, I mean, it looks clearly like the product of someone else. I think he might have written the end because there's a little personal section he has in there about bookstores that they used to go into. But if you read it, I think it's like pretty clear that someone else is writing this. My guess would be Ithon. That'd be my guess. And there's some interesting things. The whole book sets itself up as basically, hey, this book is against this giant conspiracy theory that we all face. And that's how it starts off right away. Is the idea is that, there's a big conspiracy theory. And page 7, listen to what it says. A collective group compromising individuals, organizations, government entities, and religious organizations. Includes the Vatican and the World Council of Churches, the United States government, her European allies, the Anti-Defamation League, APAC, the Canary Mission, Southern Poverty Law Center, major publishing companies, the school system, and of course the media. All made a solemn promise to impede our ability to awaken to a deeper understanding of our spiritual essence.
wow. So just one giant cabal to
Is
stop Bishop Nathaniel.
is anyone not included in there?
I'm surprised he didn't say us. The
Well,
Apolopathetics.
we are mentioned once in the book. Did you see that part?
Is it about the Zandovan Bible Dictionary?
The secret campaign.
Yeah.
The secret campaign to get the entry removed.
Yeah. I showed that part. Yeah.
I want to know who's involved with this campaign.
Well, if I recall, I think it was it Nefer that brought it up.
Yes, but she brought it up. But then what happened is your guy, Kelly Richardson, emailed Zondervan and was like, hey, what about this, right? The ham entry.
Right.
And they emailed back and he felt like it was a vindication. And then what Never Nitty did is she analyzed the email because he shared it. He shared the email.
Mm-hmm.
She analyzed the email and showed that, first of all, no surprise, Kelly misread the email basically. Like he didn't really even properly understand what it was saying. But the email itself was not sufficient to be on their side. It was problematic. And so I don't think she actually did anything herself as far as contacting, to my knowledge. I never heard of that. But my understanding is Kelly did, and then she just analyzed the email that Richardson did. That's what it was. But yeah, it's unbeknownst to the general public, there's been a racist campaign by apologists. So here's the thing. If it's campaign, that's got to be like a whole thing going on. And if it's apologists, it's got to be plural. So I feel like if anyone would know this, honestly, wouldn't it be us? You, me?
Yeah. Because that's who he's directing it to. He's saying we were the ones.
Yeah.
I didn't contact anybody. So
yeah. So I want to know if they're just saying we've criticized the entry and their use of it.
That's true.
Yeah, but that's what we do with all their sources that are garbage. We're not trying to remove them all. We just want them to deal fairly,
Right.
And maybe every now and then understand what they read. That'd be cool.
Right.
But this book is crazy because right after that it says these same racist Christians. Now, because it doesn't tell you who it is, the audience might be like, oh, all these white people are after us. That's what I feel like the vibe they're trying to get, but far from the truth. These same racist Christians will soon claim Zondervan's is not an academic work. Well, the Compact Bible Dictionary is not an academic work. And then literally the next sentence is, have you ever noticed the Christian Bible movies always portray Ham and his sons as Caucasians? What? No new paragraph heading. No, right. It goes from an entry on Ham supposedly being Semitic, according to their understanding of this, to the 10 Commandments, Charlton Heston. What? This book is just.
But what's funny too, and let me share the actual entry in question, if they agree with this entry, then they can't use the whole thing with, well, Jesus looked like the Egyptians. That's why when he hid out, they couldn't find him. Well, according to Zondervan, he wouldn't look like them because you say Jesus is a black man,
Yep.
and they're saying here that the Egyptians weren't black. So you're in trouble with that one, right? And it's funny, it says not the Negroes, but the Egyptians, Ethiopians. Mind you, the word Ethiopian in the Greek means what? Burnt face. You know what I mean? So it's like, I don't understand.
Leave that on the screen and check this out.
All right,
The entry for Ethiopian in the Zondervans. It's very interesting what it says. So this is the same thing they use, right? And now here's what it says for Ethiopia. All right. Check this out. The Ethiopian had skin of different appearance. Different appearance from who? You see what I'm saying? The Ethiopians had, yeah. This is the entry. This is the entry. It says the Ethiopians had skin of different appearance. The indication, by the way, seems to be different than the Israelites, but the Ethiopians had skin of different appearance. The Greek name Aethiop, burnt face, shows the color to have been dark. Pictures on monuments show that they were a mixed race. Some Negro, some Semitic, some Caucasian.
Really?
Now, do you see the problem here? It says they're a mixed race, some Negro.
Right.
Well, wait a minute.
When it comes to Ham,
yes,
right.
these entries contradict each other. Because here you have Ham not being the progenitor of Negroes, but here you have Ethiopians who, some Negroes, some Semitic, but here Ham is the father of Ethiopians, but not the Negroes. Right. But here Ethiopians are part Negro, according to this.
Right. So which one is it? So
some Negro, some Semitic, some Caucasian. This just shows how outdated this thing is.
Right.
It's just like, and what's crazy is, notice this is why it's not academic. Pictures on monuments show that they were a mixed race. You can tell their ancestry by looking at pictures on monuments. Bro,
that's wild.
Yeah,
but I mean, they've been using this, man. Listen, at least for me, since the 80s, because walking around 125th Street, downtown Brooklyn, it's the same posters. They haven't updated the posters. The white Jesus with the red. They put the red horns on him with the 666. It's the same posters. They haven't changed anything. And why should they, right? Because for them, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. It's been effective, and hopefully, with us, highlighting these things, hopefully they won't be as effective. I mean, that's the kind of reason why we do what we do, right? So to really refute their teachings, whether it's by postal board, video, or pamphlet, right? So, but yeah, so that's all I wanted to share. Definitely was happy to have vocab come through to add on to what we was discussing today. But before we wrap it up, vocab, any last thoughts about this book? And please do any shameless plug that you would like to do as well.
Well, yes. A last thought about this book that is significant is it continues the new IUIC trend of having a brand new chart. They have a new chart. So it's fascinating because the classic 12 tribes chart that we're familiar with looks different than the new 12 tribes chart in the book. Here, I'm going to try and make it a little bigger here. So this is page 364. This is in the Kindle edition. I want everyone to look carefully at this and see if you can follow this, okay? So I'm going to show you the 12 tribes of Israel chart contained here in the book, okay? And everyone just try to think of the chart as you know it prior to this, okay? This is from the book that Alfredo's looking at today. Judah, American blacks. That's normal, right? But who else is on there? Alfredo?
Igbos, the Ashanti, Sudan, Liberia, Sierra Leone, and the Mandinka.
Igbo alone is like 42 million people.
Hmm.
These men literally just updated their chart, adding at least 42 million people to it. Igbo are primarily Nigeria, not only primarily, and they just put 42 million. No biggie, just add 42 million to my tab. Benjamin, that's basically the same.
Mhm.
Levi, look at Levi, who's added there after the Haitians.
Said the Hausa,
Yeah.
Malawi, Zambia, Lemba.
The Lemba live in South Africa and in Zimbabwe.
Then we're still they added to the Puerto Ricans. We got the Yorubas, that's an interesting connection.
Well, you probably could guess how they did it, right?
Santeria, Yoruba, yeah.
But how cheap is that? You know what I mean? Now, Manasseh, isn't it crazy? Judah just increased by 42 million plus. Manasseh's still just the Cubans. Simeon's
Right.
still just the Dominicans. Gad gets updated, though. It's not just the American Indians. It's two other people groups added in there. Reuben is still the smallest tribe known to mankind, just the Seminole.
And Seminole, ain't that's problematic, right? Because the Seminole is not just, right? So
because Seminole is not actually a proper tribe.
right.
It's a tribe that existed because it basically means renegade or runaway, rogue.
Right.
That existed after Spanish incursion into those territories. Let's just say European incursion because they went to kind of a Spanish territory in Florida. But at least 3 different tribes, I think Creek, Muskegee, and another group, I can't remember right now, a Creek, Muskegee, and a third group went, and that is what created the Seminole in the swamps of Florida. So it was pre-existing tribes that got together, and then you ended up with the Seminole. It's a tribe that's literally a result of European expansionism. So, but they're still just by themselves.
Phil Fox, Cherokee, he said. Big up to Phil Fox.
Oh, I think he's right. Yeah, I think he's right. Thank you, Phil Fox. Now, here, let me make this. This one needs to be all on one. Look at Naphtali. This one is very significant right here.
That's wild. So you got Argentina, Chile, Zulus, Xhosa, the Basotho, the Swati, the Ndebele, and the Pacific Islands. Man,
bro,
connect them dots.
It used to be Argentina to Chile, right? That's the old One West chart. They're adding the Zulu here. Okay. I don't know the connection. Now, they have some random thing in their mind, I'm sure. But Zulu, Argentina, Chile, the Pacific Islands? Yo, I know a specific story. Marcus told me. Marcus was in there for 7 years in VA, and he knew a brother in Houston in IUIC. And they did the coercion tactic to make him divorce his wife. Not Marcus, but this brother in Houston. Mm-hmm. Why did they make the brother in Houston? He was a captain. Why did they make him divorce his wife? His wife was Hawaiian.
Wow.
Well, guess what he didn't need to do? If he could have just held off
a couple more years,
a few more years, and waited till
wait for the update of the OS system.
Wait until Nate got that DLC pack. Got that DLC pack, right? From the Most High, and saw that actually Hawaiians are part of Naphtali. After all. And what's crazy is GOCC already had Pacific Islanders as part of Naphtali in their chart. I talk about this in my first little book.
So So we see all these African nations and tribes added, right? Mm-hmm. So when they say the nasty African, who is that? Now, who's left?
You want to know the truth? Who it is?
Yes.
Africans who don't accept their doctrine. Because when Ron Dalton grilled Nathaniel, Nervous Nate, about this topic, he basically said, we don't know who, but we know who accepts the doctrine. And this is a paraphrase, but basically that's what he said. He went to some verses, the proof text, that idea, but basically It's the Africans that accept. And we kind of showed that when we showed a video of them supposedly being persecuted. I use that term very loosely. Persecuted.
Right.
In Kenya, people threw some rocks and some water at them and
Right.
told them to leave because we don't know who you are. That's what it said. I had a guy, a Christian brother who speaks Swahili, and he translated what the Kenyans were saying. And the IUIC said they were railing against the Black Jesus image. They weren't. They were saying, we don't know who you are. Get out of here. Leave us alone. Stop bothering us. That's what they said in Swahili, because he heard the crowd and he said, no, this is what they're saying. So check it out. They were watching the video in the classroom of when the Kenyans were throwing water and stuff at IUIC, okay? It pauses because they're going to comment on the video, right? And it pauses, and there's a large, taller lady who probably has on a wig, and he looks and points and says, look at that baboon. Nathaniel, to one of the Kenyans.
Wow.
Because I guess they're rejecting the doctrine. So then that's what she is to Nathaniel. It is this religion is crazy to me, how anyone could be like, yeah, that's my guy. Yeah, those are my people. Yeah, these are the guys I want to take religious instruction from, you know. But this is what we reviewed it. I played the video, so this is not some little story. This is I show the clip when I reviewed this thing about the Kenyan persecution. So my point is, it's basically those who accept it, and they're the ones, and the ones who don't, they're not.
Well, that's true, because I remember, again, Bishop did this as well. There was some Hispanic men that recently left IUIC, and they were critiquing them, and they were doing a video about their critique, and they were calling them conquistadors and wetbacks.
Yes, and
Bishop was calling them wetbacks. I'm like, so what I found interesting, right? So they don't. It's not so much that they want you to wake up to your nationality. They'll lease you your nationality.
Yep.
Right? It's not enough for you to be that. You can only be that if you're with us. You get to be one of the 12 tribes if you're affiliated with IUIC. And the minute you leave, you can leave, but we keep your nationality.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. Because it's really actually about acceptance of their doctrine.
Right.
And, I wrote about this. And I thought I used, let me see if I can find this. This is a pretty fascinating little section here. This has to do with when Tahar was beefing with Nathaniel kind of in the early days of YouTube, when it was not clear at all that it was not clear at all in the early days that IUIC would ascend over GMS. In fact, it looked like GMS in the early days of YouTube had the upper hand because YouTube wasn't very regulated back then, and they were really sensationalistic, and it seemed like GMS was the one kind of gaining the foothold because of how outlandish their street teaching videos were, right? And so they were beefing, and sometimes randomly Tahar would look at the camera and say stuff about Nate. I want to read briefly, because this relates to what you just said, page 53 or 54, about this idea. GMS's alleged ability to read spirits is hard to take seriously in light of how often they change decisions about a person, seemingly based on whether or not that person agrees with them. Just what you said, the identity is on lease. On numerous occasions, Tahar has referred to past camp leaders of GMS, HODC, or ICUPK, whom he now considers heathens, saying, remember that so-and-so, that Edomite, or that Hamite, or that Elamite that used to be in the camp? So then he refers to them by a different ethnicity once they've left. You see? The psychology behind Tahar's game of ethnic musical chairs became most obvious when Tahar once addressed Nathaniel, saying, quote, this is a quote now, "You better be careful, Nate, because you're starting to look like a Watusi," end quote.
Wow.
Per Tahar's doctrine, Nathaniel could not do anything about his lineage. Tahar offered the warning because he meant Nathaniel better be careful about opposing him. Otherwise, Tahar might declare Nathaniel a Gentile in the recesses of his own mind, damning Nathaniel to an afterlife of eternal servitude. He would literally tell Nathaniel, look out, you're starting to look like a Watusi to me.
That's crazy.
Is Unbelievable. And this religion is gaining adherence. You gotta be kidding me, man.
Well, I mean, it's striking a chord. It's like what I said in my debate with Tazariak. It's the hermeneutic of revenge. People are upset, and these guys, instead of helping them with this anger, they weaponize. And they justify the anger with scripture. So that's just what it is.
Yes, indeed.
But yeah, man. So with that being said, that was great. Thank you for bringing up the new tribe chart. Yeah, I'm dying to see them break that. Have they done a breakdown of the new chart yet?
Not that I've seen. In fact, I searched. I didn't even see that IUIC did a live stream on this book yet. I did see where a number of leaders had to take pictures and say, I got my copy. Do you got yours? I
Right.
saw that on social media, but I didn't see anything more than that. Just that it was available and all that.
Because they haven't changed the posters. Like if you go to their website, Original Royalty, where you get the camp posters. So they still have the old tribe chart there. So they haven't updated it there. So I don't know if this is like a slow rollout, maybe, and eventually. So
My bet is, if I had to guess, if I had to think about how IUIC does things, they'll make 2 editions because there's really no need, I think, to do away with the relative simplicity of the current 12 tribes chart and how visually lined up it is. And in a Western hemisphere context, that's probably all you really would need. Then you can
right.
just tell people, oh, you're on here too. My guess is they'll make a global edition, like what they might call an Isaiah 11:11 edition, because Isaiah 11:11 is the scripture they lean on for a lot of this activity. My guess is they'll come out with one that's like an Isaiah 11:11 expanded one that you could buy that they would probably use when they're doing their globe trotting, which they call the booster club activity. That would be my guess, because then it'd be quicker for them to say, hey, look, you're on here. You're Bantu. Hey, look, you're on here.
Right.
But that remains to be seen. I don't know. But it has appeared in 2 books, and I cannot believe no one has commented on this. This is actually, the book is bad. It's poor. We had AI analyze its structure. It's poorly structured. We had AI analyzes the sources that it uses, and AI then categorizes the sources. It hardly ever cites the sources, and when it does, it literally just wholesale dumps them in there without any transition or explanation how the sources function in the argument. So it's horrible on all these aspects, right? Conspiratorial, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's got some interesting AI pictures, I guess. But probably the biggest thing about this book is the fact that it also includes this updated 12 tribes chart. That's actually a huge deal within the One West spectrum, because everyone should remember the original 12 tribes chart was given from who? From the Lord. From the Lord. But now you're tinkering with it. That's why you'll hear some of them say now, it's a blueprint. It's an outline. You'll hear some of that language. It's like, man, y'all was saying this was from the Lord. If you listen to Johanna's old story about it, he says the Lord gave this to Arya, and then we at the school searched it out and did the research and found out that it was true. This is the short version of how he describes what happened. And there's even a background to it. Arya worked construction. He fell down an elevator shaft, apparently broke both of his legs and maybe some other bones, but my understanding is both of his legs. And while he was laid up, the Lord gave him this chart. And it seems like it happened before 73, because I believe that's when Bibbins was taken out by the Nation of Islam. And the indication is that Bibbins promoted the chart at some point, according to Naphtali bin Naphtali, who's an older Israelite who's now passed on, who was a non-one Wester, but went way back to the old school. So the chart, we don't know exactly, but it would maybe around 73. But my point is, now they're just adding to it. It's not really a divine document then, is it? You can just get new downloadable content,
Unless this is a new revelation,
See, I could see that, because Nathaniel has been posturing himself more and more as a prophet, continuing the book of Acts.
Right.
Yeah, and of course to his guys too, to a certain extent. But the Nathaniel worship is rising to increased levels. I'll do a video on IUIC and I get very little interaction, like where they say you got this wrong, this time code. Very little. When I say very little, I mean basically none of that. It's
Mhm.
all Nathaniel is an apostle of God, and you should respect him. The comments are filled with stuff like that. And anytime, or why are you obsessed with IUIC? Because they're the truth. It's all unjustified triumphalism and Nathaniel worship. It's very little actual interaction with any of the content.
I mean, yeah. I mean, I saw when he came in Passover with the white horse, and the camera would shift to the audience, and the women would be in tears.
Michael Jackson, bro. Michael Jackson, Elvis
Yeah,
Presley.
in
Yeah,
tears.
yeah.
Like, I can't believe he's here. I get to
It's like
see him in person.
you got like these kind of shots.
Yeah, yeah. It's like the Beatles. You know what I mean? It's crazy. Absolutely
Yeah,
crazy.
that was an interesting time, that Passover con,
Passover con.
because they come out with the shields and everything. Just wait. As IUIC grows, their upcoming Passover cons, they are going to get more and more outlandish. You're going to see stuff that you just it's going to be too much.
I mean, it's such a great celebration of people who are in captivity. It's like you have two white women drawing this horse what that you are riding, but you're in captivity, right? They just recently I saw a video talking about how, oh, you polyprophetics, you guys don't travel the world that like we do. You guys are novices. You don't have the knowledge. I'm like, wow, for people that's supposed to be in captivity, you guys have such free reign. Wow, amazing.
Yeah, they have their own streaming channel. It's called
Right,
IUIC TV. It's their own streaming content channel.
right. And Roku, right? You can get the
Yes.
Roku thing, and yeah, yeah,
Yep.
they
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 have their own record label, Original Royalty.
yep.
They
They
have
sell clothes. They do
multiple
they
buildings, multiple
fashion
properties.
shows.
Yes,
It's
fashion
like
shows.
man, you guys
And
make captivity look sexy. I mean,
n-
it's what else they
now
got? Uh
they're
oh,
doing
ice cream. They sell ice
the
cream.
they sell ice cream. I don't know,
I don't
maybe.
know.
Now they're doing the Land Blitz.
The Land Blitz.
The
What's the
Land
Land
Blitz.
Blitz, bro?
Send your cash send your Cash App donations and your money orders and your checks to this address so we can buy our own land and not have to get permission from Esau anymore.
Uh-huh.
They're buying a property specifically for everybody. Basically, it's going to turn into a purple and
Malak
gold compound.
Yeah, it's gonna be Malachi York right there. That's what a new
The Branch Nathanielites. It's going to be that.
that's gonna be scary.
Yeah, because whenever these leaders get their own property like that, not a building
That's
that they
when things
rent,
get crazy,
that's
right?
when they're able to exert total control and give it. It's basically their success and able to procure land always ends in a cult's downfall. It's an interesting element of how their success destroys them. Happens every time. The only exceptions are cults that radically alter who they are or what they do. Like, because you could maybe make that argument, for example, back in the 1800s with the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, the Mormons, and how they got
Right,
Utah. A little bit
right,
different because this is the different time in America. A little bit different, but a rough parallel. But what happens is they assimilated and integrated basically into mainstream American society for the most part.
right.
So they had to radically change, and so it's not an identical situation as like some kind of compound or something.
Right.
Um, but whenever this happens, Jonestown, Branch Davidians in Waco, all these weird cults. A lot of people don't know South America is actually plagued with cults, and a lot of them incorporate old black blood sacrifice rituals from pre-Christian religions, mixing in with some kind of Bible-based or Catholic-based cult. It's really
Right.
bizarre.
You
And
got you
when it,
got the Wild Beings in Atlanta. I forgot the
yep,
name of the compound, but same thing
yeah,
there.
yeah, that's where most of the abuse happened. He was doing the abuse for years in New York and Bushwick for years.
Right,
But
right,
once he got his own compound, he went more free reign. In fact, it was said prior to that, his victims weren't as young, generally speaking, and they tended to be female. The evidence for York indicates when they got down there, he went to younger and younger. We're talking prepubescent children and boys as well, not just girls.
right.
Equal opportunity rapist.
Crazy, crazy. But yeah, man. I mean,
And
it's
Mark Lamont Hill used to be in there.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Which
Mm.
which is crazy. But yeah, man. So we're gonna wrap it up. This was great, vocab. Thank you so much for coming. I saw you recently talking about a summer camp
Oh yeah, yeah,
in Mexico. Can you
yeah.
share a little bit about
Um,
that?
there's a few apologetic summer camps that exist, and they're all astronomically expensive. We're talking over $2,000 for almost every one I've seen costs a couple grand. This is the only one I'm aware of that's under 1,000. In fact, it's barely over 500. I forgot the full price for your student. I'm not running the camp. I'm just the speaker there, but I'm proud of this camp and what it is. It takes place in New Mexico. Beautiful place. It's in June 23rd to June 28th. And I'm going to be one of the main speakers on who was the real Jesus. So we're going to talk about the Jesus of the world religions and how that matches up with the Bible, what the Bible says about Jesus versus what the cults say about Jesus. Who really is Jesus now? Who really was he when he was walking on the earth? All these kinds of things versus these other portrayals and pop culture and whatnot. And so I just wanted to let people know this is something I'm really encouraging people to go. It's something you would send your student to. Now, they want volunteers from other churches and ministries to come be volunteers. You got to go through a process, of course, to get cleared for that. But I'm not the person to talk to. I just point people to the website, which I believe is Engage Truth Apologetics. Let me make sure I got the right website. But I just dropped a what am I trying to say? I just dropped the a channel, a trailer for it. Yeah, that's how you saw that. I dropped the trailer for it on the
Mm-hmm.
YouTube
Mm-hmm.
channel today. But yeah, it's engageapologetics.com, engageapologetics.com, and the camp is called Engage Truth Ministries, and they've done this for years. So this is not the first time or anything that's happening, but it's a really cool thing, and I really hope people can come down there, and it'd be great to see apologetics and a bunch of other fun camp stuff.
Cool, cool, good stuff. I'm glad you brought that up. So, all right, man. So, real quick, vocab, final thoughts before we sign off.
This book that you reviewed today is not really written for us. It is really not written for outsiders. It is meant as a coffee table apologetic for members. So, yes, they put some amount of work into it as far as these kinds of things go, even though it's poorly done in the sense of the facts. It could be looked at as a high quality product as far as the aesthetics of it, and sort of almost the argument from there it is, meaning look at that book. It has a bunch of old books sourced and cited inside of it that prove who we really are.
Right.
I do not think any member of IUIC will read the book nearly as carefully as I and a number of Christian apologists like yourself did, even using AI tools to analyze some of the data. I don't think anyone's going to do anything like that remotely, even similar, to be honest. I think
Right.
there may be rare exceptions. It functions as a different type of apologetic, the apologetic of wait, because you mentioned this when we talked how literature, this is a quote from Alfredo, everyone, literature provides the air of legitimacy.
Mm-hmm.
You had said that when we were on the phone
Mm-hmm.
last week, and
Yep.
that's
Yep.
exactly right. That's what this book will function as. So I know if someone watches this and they see how silly the book is, they may be tempted to just discount it. You got to understand this is a major step for this cult. And what it does is it provides a faux legitimacy.
Yep.
The content's not good, it's not factual, but it has sort of an aesthetic, like physical element to it for members to comfort them. That even if they can't prove the doctrine, even if they watch one of Alfredo's videos and start to feel doubty about their leader's veracity, get a little
Mm-hmm.
doubtful about if they're really telling the truth, they can look at this book, see a couple pictures, and say, okay, they've done the research. They've done the research. Now I got to go back to my job or whatever it is I got to do. I got to go to camp or whatever it is I got to do.
Right. Right.
And I think that's really what this book does. So I think if people understand that, they'll understand that the book is serving its purpose for internal boundary
Right.
maintenance for this cult.
Right. That's good. That's good. And and we're gonna continue to look and open the car hood of their doctrine, and we're gonna pick it apart, and we're gonna keep exposing the fallacies and the heretical doctrines that these and others teach, because we're here to defend the gospel of Jesus Christ. So,
Amen.
so with that being said, it's BK and Vocab signing off. Peace.